12 and 1 o'clock? Okay, so yeah, 12 and 1 o'clock at the Archaeological Research Facility, the Brown Bag Lecture. Again, an opportunity to, do those extra credit assignments. And I think we're going to keep you guys posted as more lectures come up. There'll be some more opportunities there. Yeah. Okay. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off last time. We were talking about the Hittites. And actually, let me jump back here. You guys can help me remind me where we were here. We're looking at the Hittite city of Hattusas. And I want a slideshow right here. Okay, so we're going to jump ahead here. We're finishing up Mitanni. Alalak. And if I'm not mistaken, we started talking about the rise of the Hittites, particularly in the second half of the Late Bronze Age, right? In the LB2, around 1400 BC, that's when we see the Hittites really taking power in the north, right? In Anatolia. They, again, from this brief lull after sacking Babylon in 1595, right? Would kind of disappear for a while. They come back in force around 1400 and really start causing problems in the north for the kings of Mitanni, particularly. We were looking at Hattusas. We spoke about the capital city in depth last time, and I think we were talking about the fortifications and defenses of this city. The city which was built to withstand siege and all these really clever tricks, right, for counterattacks, right? Postern gates that troops could funnel into, staircases where you could flank enemy battalions, things like that. Glacis, right? These large protective ramps, right, that would keep people from digging in under the walls and also keep chariots from getting pretty close to the walls themselves. And we were looking at the Sphinx Gate, the Postern Gate, right, the Glacis, again, this amazing piece of defensive architecture. And I think we were getting to the Lion Gate. Where did we leave off? Did we get to the Lion Gate last time? No? Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. We're looking at these three gates. I'll just jump back here to the city plan itself, and we're looking at the upper city. We looked at the Sphinx Gate, right, where these defensive attributes are, and talked about how, if you're going to attack the city, this is where it's going to be. This is the weak point. But two other gates that lead into the upper city, we have the Lion's Gate, and we have the King's Gate here to the west and east, respectively. Let's just jump ahead, take a look. These gates, very similarly to the Sphinx Gate, were themed in a sense. You can see, again, as we said last time, each gate consisted of really two gates, an inner gate and an outer gate, which were flanked on both sides by large towers that allowed you to control egress and entrance. Really strong points because right, you want to defend and control trade and who's coming and who's going in the city. So you can see here the Lion Gate, very similar to the Sphinx Gate, has these wonderful sculptured lions, right? Flanking lions, like what we saw at Alalak a bit before. You can see here they serve a decorative function, but also a very functional role as structural elements. And these would have, very similarly to the Sphinx Gate, have created these large parabolic arches that would have met up at the top. So they've been very, very impressive, again, with very high wooden doors, again, carved probably from cedars. Again, this is up in Anatolia, so there's a lot of access to wood and access to the coast in Lebanon, for example, where these cedars would be coming from. So you can see, again, two sets of lions, this inner gate here, and then in the back, right, in the very back, this outer gate. Again, with rooms on the inside for battalions of guards, really very well fortified structure. The third gate's very similar. It's known as the King's Gate. And instead of sphinxes, lions, right now we have what's been termed, what's been said to be the King's Gate. This is actually probably not a depiction of a Hittite king. This is more likely a Hittite god. You can see he's got these sort of little proto-horns kind of coming out of the top of his head. Probably a divinity in this case. In fact, we're going to see some depictions of these Hittite kings we talked about last week on Friday. But again, he's an orthostat of sorts, right? A decorative motif that is symbolically protecting the entrance of the city of Hattusas. You can see here actually he's holding a weapon in one of his hands. This is a very particular Hittite weapon. There's this axe, as you can see. It's kind of coming up. It's a little hard to make out, but here's the blade of the axe. You can see it's got these very particular flanges coming off of the back, 4 flanges. This is a very specific Hittite weapon. You can see here, there's an example of one that we have that's forged, right? The axe head, and then these sharp flanges, right, for, hacking and, poking your enemy in all sorts of nasty ways. Pretty effective weapon we see here. Hattusas, as we said, is divided into an upper town and a lower town, but in between the two of them, on the highest point of this really large city, we see a citadel that has its own series of defenses, its own defensive wall. So, in case the lower city was sacked, the upper city was sacked, the king could still maintain himself in this large royal citadel. We've looked at palaces, at Mari, at Alalak, these different palaces. In Hatti, we see a very different structure. Instead of one massive palace at Hattusas, you can see here, we see a series of buildings, these long buildings here, which again, probably all had upper stories. The defensive networks also, you can see these double walls probably served as accommodations for soldiers, for storage. These long rooms especially, some of them columned, again, right? This is a tree-rich area. You can see evidence of columned halls. Some of this isn't excavated. But this is, again, an administrative facility that's defended against siege and meant to store commodities, luxuries, pretty much everything you're going to need to run an empire the size of, what we've seen the Hittites were able to achieve, but also, right, to defend against getting attacked. So you could, hold out in this citadel for quite some time if you had to. This is also where the royal archives of Hattusas were found. An archive of over 10,000 tablets that talk about everything from successions to international correspondence. Again, we said that the late Bronze Age, particularly, is a very interesting time in which we see recognition of these great kings, right? King of Hatti writing to the king of Egypt as his brother, exchanging diplomatic gifts, intermarrying, right? So this is a period of international correspondence. And we find tablets at Hattusas, an archive of tablets, similar to that which was found at Tel El Amarna, dating to the reigns of Amenhotep III and Amenhotep IV. So I've put these names up on the board again, these kings which, again, around 1350, are all contemporary and writing to one another. Egypt, Mitanni, Hatti, Assyria, and we haven't gotten to Babylon. We'll get to Babylon on Wednesday. Friday, we're going to talk about Egypt, tie the whole thing together, and then send you guys off to spring break. But you can see here that the Hittites have their own way of actually sealing tablets. They go back to stamp seals. So these are royal stamp seals of the Hittite kings that go smack right in the middle of a tablet. So that peace treaty, for example, that the Hittites later sign with Egypt is a typical treaty like this. They actually sent Ramses II a silver tablet with the treaty inscribed on it. This is the one we said last time is in the United Nations. It's one of the first peace treaties ever signed. We see religious architecture at Hattusas. In the lower town specifically, there's a temple, and it's a very interesting temple. We'll kind of zoom in on it. You can see the aerial photographs of the site here. Again, not much preserved in terms of, we have the foundations, but similar to the citadel, there's an emphasis on storage and again, the temple is really serving all of these long rooms. Whenever we see these long, thin rooms, these are storage facilities that would hold everything from, again, commodities, grain, wine even, things that are being traded, textiles, all of these items that are being circulated internationally at this time. You can see here's one of these sort of alcoves, and these massive pots. You can actually, I don't have a great scale of these, but you could climb inside one of these very easily and hide in it. There are photographs of people doing just that. These are called pithoi. And pithoi are storage jars that just hold huge, quantities of grain, of oil, of wine, whatever it is that you're trading at the time. So similar to the citadel and the palace and some of the buildings on the citadel, the temple of the weather god in the lower city is also sort of dedicated to storage. It is a temple. You can see it's got this central access in which you would walk into a courtyard with a columned portico at the very end. In fact, there are some basins. This temple, I'm sorry, not palace, is about 480 by 400 feet, so very, very large, and surrounded by these outer storerooms, which probably also served a defensive purpose as well. Right, this is a storage facility entered in right through another gate, as you can see here, to the east. So again, we're looking at facilities that probably were used for redistribution, the temple serving to hold and then redistribute goods throughout the empire at this time. So, and we also see, in the temple itself, some cult scenes. This is actually something we'll see again, the Hittite ruler, the depiction of the Hittite king carrying this curved staff. I'm going to draw your attention to this because we're going to see it again in just a moment. Within walking distance of Hattusis, we find another sanctuary, a sanctuary called Yazlikiah. And Yazlikiah is a natural open-air sanctuary. It's about 1.5 kilometers away from Hattusis. And it's a center that we believe was used for different ceremonies, perhaps related to the New Year's festival that we read about in Hittite texts. And you can see why it would be attractive to the Hittites. It's high up, it's this open air alcove of these stones. You can see these are actually the rocks, right? The plan of these natural, this natural rock outcropping that the sanctuary is built into. And it's also the site of a natural spring where you could go and get fresh water. So it holds a special place, we believe, in Hittite ritual. This sanctuary is divided into two different chambers. There's chamber A, which is this large chamber here, and then chamber B, which is this long, narrow one on the side. And we'll take a look at each one in sequence. So beginning with chamber A, we see a series of carvings that were carved during the reign of Hattusili III, and then later on King Tudhalias IV, those kings we listed last time, kings that come after Shuppilulilumus. But we know this area was used early on, as early as the 15th century. It's dedicated mainly to these specific Hittite gods. The sun goddess of Arena, whose name is Teshub, the weather god, and their son Sharuma. And what we see in this chamber are two processions. On the left-hand side, so you can see here, as we're sort of staring into the chamber, we see a progression of gods going all the way to the back of the chamber, these male gods. On the right-hand side, conversely, if you look up here, we see a progression of female gods coming all the way to the back. And this is a land that is said to have been the land of 1,000 gods. So we're seeing at least 64 of them in this kind of